Greetings. Welcome to our 7th episode of the FGI podcast series. My name is Tim Stark, and I am a professor of civil engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
And hello, everyone. This is Jen Miller, and I'm the coordinator of the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute, or the FGI.
On today's episode, we're going to focus in on stormwater management using geosynthetics with Terry Sheridan of the GeoStorage Corporation in New Jersey. Terry gave the March 2020 webinar just 2 days ago on March 24th, 2020. And this is a follow-up podcast to address some of the questions that we did not have time to address after the webinar. Terry, thanks for joining us again, and I'll get back to the first question. Terry, during your webinar, you discussed placing angular gravel on top of the geosynthetics and geomembrane, and that puncture testing should be conducted. What ASTM puncture test method should be used?
Well, the ASTM standard for the puncture resistance is ASTM D4833. So that would be the most appropriate. What the specifications for the system, we have a 3/4 inch to 1.5 inch angular stone being placed on top of it. Obviously, that's pretty aggressive. So along with the fabricated geomembrane, we are speccing a hefty non-woven geotextiles, a cushion below and above the system to provide additional protection. The other thing along with puncture that we look at, we recognize that the fabricated geomembranes have excellent puncture resistance and construction damage resistance, and perhaps the elongation properties and the multi-axial elongation properties of the fabricated geomembranes are the best indicator of that.
Okay,
great. Thanks, Terry, and welcome to our podcast. And also,
Thanks,
I just
Jen.
wanted to say quickly, thank you again for your outstanding webinar on Tuesday. It was so well informed, so we really appreciate you taking the time to do that for the FGI. So I have a question. What is a typical puncture specification for a geomembrane?
As I said, the ASTM 4833, D4833 is what would be referenced. However, once we have a 30 mil thick product that's a fabricated geomembrane with those geotextiles cushioning on the top and the bottom, we're very comfortable about the survivability of the product. But as a check on that and a reference, you can look into that ASTM standard.
Okay, thank you.
great. Thanks, Terry. Are there any chemical compatibility concerns with the geomembrane? In other words, is there anything that in the stormwater that might require some consideration of chemical resistance?
Well, you hit upon it. This is stormwater. So, we have two different markets that the geomembrane industry works in, the environmental and the, let's call it the commercial or the civil area. Stormwater clearly is not going to have the same sort of level of aggressive chemicals that you could possibly see in the environmental market, the wide-ranging areas in the environmental market. So for the most part, for stormwater, chemical compatibility is not a big challenge for the geomembrane. You're going to see suspended solids and the constituents that might conglomerate on those suspended solids and carry it through. Phosphorus is another area from lawn products that will have a small percentage in there, nothing that would be aggressive enough to cause any concern. But keep in mind that stormwater chemical compatibility is not a concern for just about any of the products that I could see in the fabricated geomembrane menu.
Okay.
All right, great. Is there any field geomembrane testing required?
When you say required, that's an interesting topic, because once again, you have the environmental market and you have the civil market, and the requirements, the specifications, the quality assurance submittals, and the quality control and third-party quality control standards that the fabricated geomembrane industry is accustomed to in the environmental market, let's say the landfill market, that doesn't exist in the commercial market. So we will use either wedge weld technology for seaming, making the field seams, or more typically an air lance test is sufficient. And the submittal that will be given from the typical geomembrane installer out there will be far in excess of what the commercial quality control or the oversight engineer is even looking for. They'll put it in the file, certainly, but the process, just the standard operating process for the landfill, for the liner company, is going to have them providing all the data for the materials and the installation they did, that is what they're accustomed to doing, and it'll always be submitted. I'll often get a chance to review it, but the consulting engineers in the commercial market and the civil market, it's not quite the same as the environmental market, and that just gets filed away. But we are looking for as few seams as possible out there. We like to have the large panels factory assembled, and on the field seams, we like I said, very happy with the air lance, and if it's cool enough and they're productive with the wedge weld, that's perfectly acceptable also.
Perfect. Terry, you mentioned placing 3/4 inch to even up to 1 1/4 inch angular gravel on the cushion geotextiles and the geomembrane. Do you have any preferred methods or field techniques for placing this material without damaging the geosynthetics?
Well, we do like to make sure that there's not a large drop in that. Now, one of the good things that is just the nature of the job is we place the soil in 9-inch lifts, and the typical placement operation is an excavator feeding from a rock box, and the rock box being filled by a front-end loader. And when the excavator, and preferably without the teeth, a smooth blade excavator, is dropping the stone, they're attempting to drop it in a fairly thin 9-inch lift, which they're not going to try to do from 8 or 10 feet. They're typically down there in the 1 to 3 foot range in an effort to keep it as close as possible to a 9-inch flat placement, so there's a little or no raking necessary by the laborers down there. So the nature of the application lends itself to that low drop and spreading of the stone. And once you have one layer of stone down, it's a protective cushion, and really nothing can go wrong from that point on. So that first layer is the most critical one. And like I said, we use a hefty sandwich to protect that geomembrane for that layer, and we're seeing good results.
Oh, great. Terry, I want to go back to puncture resistance just for listeners. So there is another puncture test that may be applicable in future projects, something for you to think about, ASTM D5514. And this is the big, what's called hydrostatic puncture test. And in this, you can create a rock pizza that simulates the aggregate that you would actually be placing on top of the cushion geotextile and the geomembrane. and then you can pressurize the top of it and see when you push the textile and geomembrane over top of the rock pizza whether it would puncture it or not. So if the listeners want to do more of a site-specific testing using site-specific aggregate, they could look at ASTM D5514. Okay. One last technical question, Terry. How are you familiar with this new lightweight aggregate created from foam glass? It's very lightweight, maybe about 1 to 2 pounds per cubic foot, and it being a little lighter weight may not impose as much stress on the geosynthetics in the bottom.
I'm very familiar with it. I think it is frankly brilliant, and I think it is going to have a lot of applications in the lightweight aggregate market out there. And as a matter of fact, the founder of that company, Archie Filshill, is a friend of mine. He's actually he was the contractor who built our very first GeoStorage system back over 10 years ago. So Archie and I go way back, and I'm very familiar with the technology and been down to the plant in Eddiestown a few times. As far as an application for geostorage, it is a very cost-effective product versus anything else you would look at in the lightweight aggregate market. But it's still going to be a little bit more expensive and not necessarily close by, because it's a very large plant that makes it as close by as a local stone quarry. So stone, open graded stone is what we use. We don't have any problems with it. The pi test that you're talking about, that hydraulic pi test, that is what we have examined to ensure that the cross section that we're using with, like I said, the typical 30 mil fabricated geomembrane and the non-woven protective layers is going to perform well. So we're not looking for a solution to a problem that we don't have, but I've got nothing but good things to say about that lightweight aggregate. And if geotechnical engineers are not familiar with it, it would be a valuable it's valuable information to know in case you come across an application that requires that.
Yeah, great. And glad you mentioned Archie. We're trying to schedule him for a webinar here at the end of 2020 or 2021. So, okay, Terry, thank you. Last question. Given that you are a Villanova graduate in civil engineering and that they occasionally make the NCAA basketball tournament, how are you dealing with the loss of March Madness this year?
Well, I tell you what, it's pretty tough to miss the Big East tournament in the Garden. And then to follow that with no March Madness is a long spring. So it's pretty tough. But I would point out that the argument now is who is the national champion. And the Virginia crowd is saying that they carry forward. But I think if you look at ESPN and NBC right now, the preseason for 2021 is Villanova ranked number one, and I think that's where we stand going forward.
Hopefully they'll make the tournament next year. All right. Well, thank you, Terry. If anyone else has any questions or would like additional information about stormwater management using geosynthetics, please contact the Fabricated Geomembrane Institute at fabricatedgeomembrane@gmail.com or visit the FGI website at fabricatedgeomembrane.com. You can also contact Terry directly at tsheridan@geostorage.com.
GeoStorageCorp.com. Just throw that.
Yeah, I misread it. Sorry.
That's fine.
tsheridan@geostoragecorp.com. All one word, geostoragecorp.com. So, Terry, thanks so much. And we're going to end with our typical taglines. Quality installed faster when you factory fabricate first.
And may all your geomembranes be factory fabricated. Thanks, Terry, so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you again today. And thanks everyone
Thanks,
for
Sheridan.
listening.
See ya.
See ya. Great seeing you.
Bye.